So you might have noticed that I did a post a couple, like a week ago about my film, the first film that I've directed that I'm so proud of, The Deb, which is a little Australian original musical that is so cute and it's awesome. That it got selected for closing night of the Toronto Film Festival, which is like the hugest, best platform. And to be a first time female director, it's just like, it's huge. It's massive. So to have the joy of the movie being selected is one thing, but then to have the business partners that are involved in that movie turn around and say that no, the movie can't premiere, is just beyond devastating. Why are they saying this? Why are they stopping it from premiering at Toronto? Well, this dates back to October of last year, where I discovered bad behavior by these business partners. And let me just, I just tell it how it is. So I'm just going to tell you who they are. They are so-called producers of the film. I use that phrase very lightly. Their names are Amanda Ghost and Gregor Cameron, and an executive producer who works with them called Vince Holden. So these are the people involved. And so I reported, I guess you would say, their bad behavior when I found out. Not minor things, big things, inappropriate behavior towards the lead actress of the film, embezzling funds from the film's budget, which we really needed because we're a small movie. So kind of really important thing.
Blake Lively and Stephanie Jones have just set their sights on a new target, and that target is none other than Rebel Wilson. What started as a messy legal battle over a movie musical has now exploded into something much bigger, something that involves Russian billionaires, Jeffrey Epstein connections, and allegations of a shadowy network operating right in the heart of Hollywood. And honestly, the more you dig into this, the more disturbing it gets. Hi everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today we're diving deep into one of the most complicated legal situations I've ever covered. We're talking about Rebel Wilson, her film The Deb, and a web of lawsuits that now connects her to Blake Lively, Justin Baldoni, and some very powerful people with very deep pockets. Grab your coffee, get comfortable, because this is going to take a while to unpack. So here's where things currently stand. Stephanie Jones has filed a motion asking for permission to file a second amended complaint in her lawsuit against her former company. This is happening about a year after she originally filed suit. And now she wants to add Melissa Nathan to the lawsuit, claiming that Melissa is basically the mastermind behind these horrible websites that supposedly smear innocent people and destroy their reputations. According to Stephanie's legal team, these websites are part of a coordinated operation, and they're trying to link Melissa Nathan to specific sites that they claim Melissa created. They're also alleging that Rebel Wilson promoted these sites, supposedly in connection with a dispute Rebel was having with her film producers over an unreleased movie called The Deb. Now, let me back up for a second because this is important. Rebel Wilson is in the middle of a massive litigation crisis. She's being sued, and she's also countersuing her film partners. This all stems from a film she was working on called The Deb. And when I tell you this woman poured her heart and soul into this project, I'm not exaggerating. This was a relatively modest budget film musical, but Rebel was doing everything. She was producing it, she was directing it, she was rewriting scripts, and she was creating the music. This wasn't just some acting gig where she shows up, says her lines, and collects a paycheck. This was her baby. She had invested years of her life into making this project happen. The film was supposed to premiere at the Toronto Film Festival in 2024. That's a huge deal. Getting your film into TIFF is a major accomplishment, and for a musical comedy, it could have been the launching pad for something really special. But right before the festival, something happened. Rebel went on Instagram and posted a video. In that video, she claimed that her partners were blocking the release of the film. She said they wouldn't allow it to be viewed at the festival. Can you imagine? You've worked for years. You've poured everything into this creative project, and then right at the finish line, someone allegedly tries to pull the plug. The film did eventually get shown at Toronto. Thank goodness. But Rebel didn't stop there. She named her partners publicly and made some serious allegations against them. She claimed they had done bad things to one of the lead actresses in the film. And she also alleged embezzlement of funds. These weren't minor complaints. These were serious accusations that would have consequences. When Rebel decided to go public with all of this, she also started talking about the backstory of who she had gotten involved with. In her second amended complaint, she claims she didn't know the reputation of Amanda Ghost when she first started working with her. She didn't know about Ghost's failed music career. She didn't fully understand who she was getting into business with when she was seeking funding for the Deb. And this is where things get really tangled. Now Stephanie Jones has essentially joined forces with Amanda Ghost and Unigram. It looks like they've come together with a common goal, to take down Melissa Nathan. But here's what makes me raise an eyebrow. They're aligning with people who maybe shouldn't be the ones leading this charge. They're attempting to claim that all these websites are being created by Melissa Nathan, Brian Friedman, and Jed Wallace. But here's something interesting. Brian Friedman isn't being sued by Amanda Ghost. Jed Wallace isn't being sued either. So if these people are supposedly running this massive smear operation, why aren't they being named as defendants? Why go after Melissa Nathan specifically? That's a question that keeps bothering me as I dig through all of this. Okay, so now we need to talk about an article that was published by The Hollywood Reporter. This article is being treated like gospel by some people, but when you actually read it carefully, there are some serious issues with how it's presenting information. The headline and the framing are designed to make you believe in this secret smear machine operating in Hollywood. The article talks about a shadowy network of anonymous slander sites that are attacking players in high-profile entertainment scandals. It specifically mentions the Blake Lively versus Justin Baldoni situation, Rebel Wilson's film fiasco, and even some ugly K-pop feuds. According to the article, critics are alleging that all of these seemingly unrelated controversies are actually the handiwork of the same small circle of operatives. It's a compelling narrative, right? It connects dots that otherwise seem completely unrelated. It makes you feel like you're getting the inside scoop on something truly sinister. But here's the problem. This article is attempting to tie together a bunch of different people who don't actually have anything to do with each other. Some of these people were never clients of Melissa Nathan. Some of these people were actually working for Stephanie Jones when these alleged smear websites first showed up. Last week, I talked to you about Alexa Nicholas and how she's now suing Brian Friedman and Melissa Nathan. Her lawsuit is based on this wild conspiracy theory that Melissa and Brian are supposedly out to destroy her life because they helped her ex-husband in some lawsuit. But here's the thing, Melissa never worked with her ex-husband. So how can she be part of a conspiracy against someone she never even worked with? It doesn't add up. What's really awkward about these articles and the narrative being pushed into the media right now is that they're citing an amended complaint filed by Stephanie Jones as if it's proof that this conspiracy exists. But none of these conspiracy allegations are actually backed by actual proof. There's a big difference between filing a lawsuit that makes allegations and having evidence that proves those allegations are true. Let's talk about the forensic evidence, or rather, the lack of it. Forensic reports from these websites have not tied any of these accused people to the sites. In fact, the forensic information from the Stephanie Jones website was actually tied to a woman named Courtney Engel. And here's where it gets really interesting. Engel worked for Stephanie Jones. When this came out, Engel signed an oath under penalty of perjury and claimed that her identity had been stolen. She said she didn't author that website. But then there's also Katie Cassis, who claims she created the copy for the Stephanie Jones website. According to Cassis, she created that copy at the behest of Melissa Nathan. But Nathan has denied any involvement in the website. And here's another important detail. Nathan never worked for Stephanie Jones. Not ever. So why would she be directing someone to create a website targeting a company she never worked for? The logic falls apart when you examine it closely. The website in question cited allegations from former employees of Jones Works and former clients. But again, Melissa never worked for Jones Works. So how would she even know these former employees? How would she have access to inside information about their grievances? The Hollywood Reporter article describes this clandestine smear machine as seemingly connecting some of the most talked about scandals of recent years. They mention the Alexander brothers' trial, the defamation battle over Rebel Wilson's film, and the feud between K-pop exec Min Hee-jin and entertainment giant Hybe. They claim these revelations were disclosed in a federal court record on December 8th. But here's something the article doesn't make clear. They published this story 2 months after that filing. And all of these allegations have been denied by Wayfarer and Nathan. Plus, the judge hasn't even ruled on whether to allow the amendment to add these claims. So the article is treating unproven allegations as established facts. The article goes on to describe a growing list of attack websites supposedly created by the same group of conspirators. They claim Nathan, her hired gun Jed Wallace, and others engage in a regular practice of creating highly offensive and negative online content against individuals, with the clear intent of destroying those individuals' reputations. According to the allegations, these smear sites have made claims without substantiation that targets engaged in extortion, embezzlement, prostitution, drug dealing, and human trafficking. These are extremely serious accusations. If true, this would be a criminal enterprise of significant proportions. But here's where I need to point out something important. The Stephanie Jones website was not about any of these things. She was not accused of extortion, embezzlement, prostitution, drug dealing, or human trafficking. Not even close. So, if this is all part of the same pattern, why doesn't her website fit the pattern? The article cites a report from a digital forensic consultant hired by Jones's lawyers. This consultant apparently detailed how raw online data had been analyzed to determine connections between the websites and Wallace. The technical assessment supposedly found multiple shared indicators, including suspicious commonalities among hosting providers, page formats, link structures, SEO systems, referring domains, and IP ranges. THR claims to have separately learned that the full scope of the vilifying sites identified by the consultant is larger than those publicly identified in the report. This suggests they likely got a copy of the report and are using it to build their story. Jones's attorneys spoke to The Hollywood Reporter and contended that it's now apparent that Nathan and Wallace have run a clandestine cottage industry of creating false smear websites and social media accounts targeting their adversaries and those of their clients, often in connection with litigation. They refer to what they've uncovered as a playbook. But here's what the article conveniently downplays. The defense's own expert has since rebutted the forensics, arguing that the methodology is flawed and insufficient to attribute the sites to anyone. In an email, Friedman denied his clients are the authors of these sites. He said there's no technical data, no forensic support, and no factual basis linking anyone retained by the Wayfarer parties to these websites. Friedman makes an important point. The forensics analysis commissioned by Stephanie Jones identifies no author and no connection to any party. What remains is speculation presented as fact. After more than a year of litigation, there's still no credible evidence. They are attempting to replace evidence with headlines. The article also brings up that Jed Wallace was sued by Blake Lively. What they don't emphasize enough is that he was dismissed from the case. If there was real evidence against him, why was he dismissed? That's a pretty significant detail to gloss over. In a deposition in the Jones litigation, a subordinate at Nathan's company acknowledged drafting content for the Jones smear site, as well as related social media posts about Jones, in coordination with Nathan, Wallace, and Friedman. Nathan has described the lawyer and online operator in a text message that has since entered evidence in the case as very close. But being close to someone doesn't prove conspiracy. Friedman is neither pinpointed by Jones's forensics as a culprit nor named in her suit as a defendant. So, if he's supposedly part of this operation, why isn't he being sued? Then the article brings up text messages suggesting Rebel wanted one of those sites, and that it could be really harsh. There's a message where someone says Rebel provides a project brief via Wallace, making her a madam, basically. Someone responds, "LOL," said Jed. "Oh my god, LOL. Okay, this one will be fun." Hours later, apparently hoping to speed up the worker, Nathan texts, "Jed and Brian asking me for a copy. LOL, kill me." On 60 Minutes Australia in November, Wilson denied orchestrating any campaign. She said, "Obviously, I had zero to do with the website. I don't even know how to create a website." That's a pretty straightforward denial. Ghost has sued Wilson, as well as Nathan and her firm and other parties, for defamation over multiple alleged smear sites with similar domain names. According to Ghost's filing, these sites falsely portrayed her as engaged in sex trafficking and pimping young women. Her attorney, Camille Vasquez, who you might remember as Johnny Depp's attorney, called this complete fiction dreamed up by Rebel and her agents. Vasquez has made some strong statements about this situation. She explains that any litigator's involvement in commissioning such sites would be a profound abuse of power and a betrayal of the lawyer's role in the justice system. She says that secretly engineering false or misleading narratives to intimidate, discredit, or pressure an opponent crosses the line from zealous advocacy into misconduct. When a professionally orchestrated smear campaign is weaponized in litigation, it distorts the legal process itself by polluting the fact-finding mission, influencing witnesses and the public, and attempting to win through reputational harm rather than evidence and law. And look, she's not wrong about that. If lawyers are actually creating smear websites to influence litigation, that's a serious ethical violation. The question is whether that's actually happening, or whether these are allegations being used to discredit opponents. So, at the heart of this, it appears that the entire Hollywood Reporter story was likely pitched to them by Ghost and probably by Stephanie Jones as well. The article asserts that these websites put out outlandish, unsubstantiated conspiracy and defamatory accusations of illegal or unethical behavior. It describes this piggybacking of false claims atop true ones as a stock disinformation tactic. Legal and PR players operating in the highest echelons of the industry told THR that while all sorts of online attacks, often involving hired guns and once considered disreputable, have become normalized, the weaponizing of smear sites as professional practice is still out of bounds. They also insist that it's exceptionally rare to encounter and even more unusual for it to end up exposed in court filings. For her part, Vasquez maintains that when she successfully represented Johnny Depp during his 2022 defamation trial against Amber Heard and Nathan managed their PR, there were no bots, no smear websites, no coordinated propaganda campaigns. So she's drawing a contrast between that experience and what's allegedly happening now. The article even goes back to Lively, contending that they weaponized a digital army around the country to create, seed, manipulate, and advance disparaging content that appeared to be authentic on social media and internet platforms. Wallace, who was sued for this, denies it. And the lawsuit was dismissed. After months of discovery, after a year of discovery, she uncovered no such campaign that ever occurred. That's not nothing. That's a significant detail. All of this is to say that this article is attempting to link different people who are unconnected, who have no common thread, and claim that Melissa Nathan dealt with all these people when she in fact didn't. She never represented Alexa Nicholas's ex-husband. She never worked for certain people being mentioned. The connections are being manufactured to create a narrative. Now let's talk about what's actually happening with Rebel Wilson's case, because this is important and it's getting lost in all the noise about smear campaigns and conspiracy theories. Rebel Wilson just filed a second amended complaint against Ghost and her team. And this came after headlines started going around that Rebel Wilson's whole lawsuit had been gutted. But actually, her motion for leave to amend was granted by the judge just a couple of days ago. According to court records, the new complaint includes 8 counts against Amanda Ghost, Gregor Cameron, Vince Holden, and Uni Graham. These counts are breach of contract, breach of implied covenant of good faith and fair dealing, false imprisonment, intentional misrepresentation, fraudulent inducement, intentional infliction of emotional distress, failure to pay wages, and failure to pay for services rendered. Let me repeat that: false imprisonment, intentional infliction of emotional distress. These are serious claims. What's really concerning to me about the way this is being covered is that details are being completely left out. Jed Wallace has already been dismissed from the Lively case. Lively's case has all but fallen apart. She has not uncovered any evidence of a smear campaign. And most importantly, there is no such website made against Lively. Nothing. Wayfair never enlisted anyone to create a website targeting her. The only website that literally exists is the lawsuit info site, which contains the amended complaint and the timeline of relevant events. That's it. There are no smears in that website. its 2 filed court documents. The case was dismissed, but it did not contain outlandish conspiracy theories. In fact, what was contained in at least Wayfair's website, which we've seen that they created, shows they didn't know anything about websites when they were creating it. So I highly doubt they were behind these other, more sophisticated sites. But the narrative wants us to believe that Melissa Nathan is the big bad boogeyman. Brian Friedman is the big bad boogeyman. That Amanda Ghost is a victim of Rebel Wilson. And that Wilson is creating all of these stories simply because she's an unruly, unprofessional actress who is mad about not getting a writing credit and therefore fabricated these false stories. When the lawsuit was first filed, it almost appeared to be a mirror of what Blake Lively's lawsuit looked like. Ghost was being portrayed like Lively, and Rebel was being portrayed as the villain. But now Ghost is teaming up with Jones, and their equal enemy is Melissa Nathan. And what's most concerning to me is what's behind all of this. The lawsuits are being funded by Len Blavatnik. And this was revealed in a document filed by Rebel Wilson. Now, I'm not saying that Blake's case is being funded by Blavatnik, or that Jones's case is being funded by Blavatnik. But there are now allegations from Rebel Wilson that she believes Ghost has been using crisis PR teams to plant these kinds of stories about her, to disparage her, to deflect from their own conduct on the set. Her attorney filed a copy of an email that was sent from one of the attorneys representing Ghost and her team. The email, dated February 5th, said, "Good morning, Allison. I'm sorry I missed you yesterday. Len spoke with Camille Vasquez, and he asked her to step in to lead the settlement negotiations directly. As you know, we have not yet discussed with them all the ideas we have been socializing with you and Rebel. So there may be some need to explore some of that ground again. But Len and I are hopeful that this could be a good thing as it brings the Ghost parties directly into the conversation, which as we've always known would be necessary to any settlement since Danny Alejandro and can't speak for or agree for them. We also know this is a necessary step to getting the demand for the carriers. I expect Camille would reach out to you directly to pick up the baton. Alejandro, Danny, and I are still here, and we will be in the background trying to keep things on track. Happy to talk early afternoon if you want to give me a call, but just wanted to give you this quick update." Rebel believes in her lawsuit that Len Blavatnik is funding Ghost's lawsuits against her. Len Blavatnik is a Russian oligarch who has been tied to Harvey Weinstein and Jeffrey Epstein. There have been lots of allegations against Len over the years. He denies all of these allegations, and he's never been convicted of any sort of sex trafficking. But the circles he's been in are questionable. So you have a Russian oligarch with a net worth of around $34 billion backing these lawsuits against Wilson. And now suddenly these articles appear, designed to paint Ghost as a victim, Blavatnik as a victim, and Rebel Wilson as the big bad boogeyman. And Nathan is portrayed as the evil woman who exposed dark secrets that were supposedly slanderous and false. But we don't know if that's even true. In Wilson's lawsuit, she alleges a lot of things about her experience with these people that on the surface don't sound like a great working relationship. Wilson stands by what she believes about Amanda Ghost. She says that what's happening to her now with this coordinated attack with Jones against her is the Amanda Ghost strategy of intimidation and bullying to silence her and evade accountability. Wilson says that Ghost has many past victims, countless individuals who have fallen silent in the face of her ruthless tactics that have derailed countless lives and careers. Wilson says she stands resolute, determined to fight not only for herself, but for the Deb and for those who have silently suffered due to Ghost's reprehensible actions over the years. According to the filing, Ghost's history of misconduct followed her to the set of the Deb, bolstered by her husband Cameron and Holden. Wilson describes working with these people who made a lot of promises about financing the film. They promised her a record label under Warner Music. They said they could give her this label and she could release all her soundtracks through it. They were going to give her 50% credit for writing. They would finance a portion of the film. In October of 2023, during pre-production, Wilson reported something deeply troubling. She learned that the lead actress of the film, Charlotte McInnes, was being sexually harassed by Ghost. According to the lawsuit, Ghost demanded and engineered McInnes to live in her Bondi Beach penthouse apartment with her. Ghost allegedly took a shower and a bath with McInnes, which McInnes reported made her feel uncomfortable. Ghost was overheard making overtly sexual remarks to McInnes during pre-production. This was McInnes's first professional film role. She was just 24 years old. Ghost was over double her age at 50. The lawsuit alleges that Ghost's highly inappropriate and sexually harassing behavior towards McInnes caused her to suffer breakdowns on multiple occasions. Wilson also alleged that Ghost, Cameron, and Holden embezzled $900,000 Australian from the film's budget to be split between them. Despite their efforts to conceal the theft, Wilson says she learned of this. What followed, she claims, was a campaign to discredit and intimidate her into handing over her rights to the film, her rights to the writing, her rights to the IP, her rights to basically everything. She describes verbal abuse. She describes being locked in a room while they screamed at her, telling her she had to sign documents or they would fire everyone. The lawsuit states that Ghost, Cameron, and Holden relentlessly disparaged Wilson, who had devoted 5 years of tireless efforts to bring this project to life. In what she describes as calculated retaliation, they frequently belittled Wilson in front of both cast and crew, seeking to undermine her contributions and diminish her standing. The disparagement has continued to this day. Wilson alleges that Ghost continually contacts people in film, stage, and music industries, offering them enticements to spread false and malicious gossip about her, and to offer support for Ghost in public forums. Ghost has allegedly hired 2 notable crisis PR firms to spread knowingly untrue slander about Wilson. The first crisis PR firm supposedly fired Ghost as a client because of her incessant demands to produce misleading and slanderous press articles. When we talk about power and money, Len Blavatnik, who Wilson alleges is funding these lawsuits, is one of the richest men in the world. He has $34 billion. Steve Sarowitz has $2 billion. Still a lot of money, but Blavatnik has a lot more billions to play with. He also owns Warner Music through his company Access Industries. Think of all the artists that have been on Warner over the years. He has a legitimacy through Warner that he may not, or probably shouldn't have. And, interestingly, when Warner was up for sale, do you know who else was asked to buy it? Jeffrey Epstein. Epstein didn't end up buying Warner Music, but Blavatnik did. Despite all of this, Wilson says she has nothing bad to say about McInnes and remains concerned for her. She describes working with her in post-production and an incident that felt strange. When McInnes was required to do an additional dialogue recording session, Cameron insisted on escorting her to the studio. They arrived an hour late. Cameron demanded that no cameras be turned on inside the studio, otherwise McInnes wouldn't enter. Cameras are typically on to allow a remote director to direct the actress. Wilson found this behavior concerning. She reached out to McInnes's agent, expressing concern. The next day, she contacted Cohen, stating it felt like Cameron was controlling the actress. Wilson's lawsuit is many pages with many allegations. Some of the sexual harassment stuff is no longer a part of the legal claims, but it's discussed as context for why the work environment was so hostile. She maintains that bringing these concerns forward is what propelled all of this retaliation. And here's what doesn't sit right with me. Regardless of whether the sexual harassment happened exactly as described, something is off. They filed declarations essentially saying yes, the bath and shower happened, but it had to do with anaphylactic shock. But you don't treat anaphylactic shock with a bath. You need a hospital or an EpiPen. And they don't deny that the actress moved in with the producer. Think about that. If this was a man having the lead actress move in with him, we would all see how inappropriate that is. You don't live with your actors. It's a power dynamic issue. It's inappropriate. And yet these claims that Wilson is bringing against Ghost are being treated as if they're all fabricated. The THR story isn't focusing on these allegations at all. Instead, it's focusing on this coordinated smear campaign narrative. In the case of Amanda Ghost, Rebel Wilson is alleging that smear strategies were used against her. So it's odd that the Hollywood Reporter just mysteriously leaves out Len Blavatnik's name, ignores the obvious ties we've seen in the Epstein files. Melissa Nathan's name appears in one email. Len Blavatnik's name appears in dozens, if not more. So while Blake and Stephanie are on a mission to take down Melissa Nathan and pin their own bad behavior on her, they're aligning with someone whose name is all over the Epstein files. Again, he's never been convicted. But there are photographs of him with Weinstein on a boat. There are allegations about how he made his billions during a time in Russia when it was very criminally obtained. Len Blavatnik is even sanctioned by Ukraine for his continued ties to Russia and Crimea. Are they really standing with victims if they're aligning with a $34 billion man who may be funding lawsuits against Rebel Wilson? Wilson doesn't have $34 billion. She can't withstand this kind of campaign. She has no incentive to lie about what happened. The film still hasn't been released. All she wants is for this movie to be made and for people to pay her for her time. At the end of the day, who are they really fighting for? Are they fighting for women, or do they just have a billionaire backing them now? What's their incentive to suddenly make Rebel Wilson the bad guy when they've never had a relationship with her? Rebel was repped by WME. WME actually had to get in the middle of this case to try to get the film released. Ari Emanuel was tasked with trying to calm things down. Now Wilson has left WME. Baldoni is out of WME, and suddenly there are all these smear articles about them both. Meanwhile, people with questionable backgrounds like Ari Emanuel and Blavatnik are portrayed as the victims. You cannot make this up. But why go after another actress? Why try to take down Rebel Wilson? Only because your common enemy is Melissa Nathan. Only because you don't like that Brian Friedman represented both of these people. When it comes to Stephanie Jones and Blake Lively, I don't trust them. And I don't believe that Melissa Nathan, whose name comes up in one email in the Epstein files, becomes this huge story while ignoring Ari Emanuel's name and Blavatnik's name. Isn't it fair to name all of them? The money behind all of this is now linked to a $34 billion man and WME. Who's the real financial backer? I don't know for certain, but it would appear there's a billionaire behind this narrative. My question is simple. Is the money more important than the concerns Rebel has raised about a young actress? Because I've seen that actress's page, and she is still running around with Amanda Ghost. The Hollywood Reporter did an entire expose on Ghost years ago about her abusive behavior and the drunken night that got her fired from Epic. Now they're running offense for her. Why? Because of Blavatnik. I can't make this up. And again, this is all alleged. This is my opinion based on the court documents and reporting I've read. I have a right to speak my opinion. Don't sue me for having one. Tell me what your thoughts are in the comments below. Do you think Rebel Wilson is being targeted unfairly? Does the Blavatnik connection change how you view these lawsuits? Make sure to give me a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Click the bell so you never miss a video. Thanks so much for watching. Bye guys.